Hi. Hi. Is there an office manager? Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Is there someone that's kind of in charge here at the headquarters?
I'm Nate Tammer.
Okay, nice to meet you. Jeremy Lucero.
Jerry, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Ruth
Greg.
Goring.
Greg, Nate Tammer.
Ruth Goring.
Ruth, nice to meet you. Sheila, how are you? Who's this gentleman with the camera?
Larry Duncan with Labor Beat TV. So we're here, we're all members of a recently formed group called the Chicago Trade with Justice Working Group from a number of organizations, labor, religious, Latin American solidarity groups, immigrant right groups, and so on that have come together to start addressing the upcoming trade agreements. The first one, of course, being the Peru Trade Agreement, which, because we formed so recently, we're a little late on, on being able to organize around that. But our concern, the reason that we came today, particularly here to Obama's office, is that Obama, as well as Clinton, had publicly stated that they were in support of the Peru Trade Agreement, and neither one of them showed up actually even to vote on the trade agreement. And that we think that sends a really bad signal, particularly given that Obama is made it very clear on the campaign trail, in a lot of his stump speeches and so on, that he doesn't want to see NAFTAs in the future, that was a mistake, and that we need to change our direction when it comes to trade policy. But here was a golden opportunity to really make a statement and say, hey, I'm not going to let these kind of things continue. And not only did he not vote on it, but then he said publicly that he was supportive of it. So that's a real concern, particularly with some really serious, real bad trade agreements coming down the pike, like the one with Colombia, the one with South Korea. So I think it's concerning to working people in this country and in Peru. I mean, there were massive demonstrations in Peru against this trade agreement. There was lots of opposition. It's concerning that people that are even saying that they're opposed to these things, then when it comes time to actually take a stand, they're not taking a stand. You know what I'm saying? So you have something you wanted to deliver.
So we have a letter in here, and I left it open because I wanted you to be able to see that there's nothing dangerous in there.
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you.
And these are some materials on the FTA with Colombia that I know he's concerned about. I remember that he stated some of that. And this is a little Christmas ornament for fair trade from Peru.
Gotcha.
So that's a present for him.
Okay, we'll pass this along. Thank you.
So we would be interested to hear back from the senator about why did he take this position on the Peru Trade Agreement? Is this a sign of where he stands on these things? I mean, why the disconnect between what he said on the campaign trail and his his non-action on this trade agreement? I know part of the problem, I think, is there's been this story out there that there were changes made about the labor and environmental protections in this trade agreement that allowed the Democrats to vote okay on this one and let it go. But if you look at it very closely, I don't think that really stands up to any kind of real scrutiny. I mean, particularly if you look at the labor situation in Peru, the International Confederation of Trade Unions is very clear on this, that the labor situation in Peru is terrible. They actually don't really have a national labor law. They've been pushing to get a national labor law, which has been stalled in their legal system for a long time. The current system basically violates all kinds of ILO standards, International Labor Organization standards. So to say that this trade agreement is going to create better labor conditions given that situation is very unlikely. But that's not even really the heart of the matter, because the problem is these FTAs, these trade agreements, at their very core are a real problem. I mean, even if you do, add little, tweak little things about the labor protections or the environmental protections, that doesn't get at the fact that these trade agreements are undemocratic in the way that they allow corporations to sue governments to overturn labor laws and overturn environmental laws. It doesn't get at the fact that this will displace lots of peasants in Peru, just as it did in Mexico, because of the way that it eliminates subsidies for small farmers in these developing countries, but it doesn't do anything about the subsidies to these big agribusinesses in the U.S., who then flood these markets with cheap goods.
Of working people, labor unions, environmental advocates, almost universally, human rights advocates, almost universally are opposed. The business community, on the other hand, is fully and very eager and robustly in favor of this legislation. So it sounds pedestrian, kind of unscientific in a way, but I think that people who are out there talking about being on the side of working people and being on the side of labor and being on the side of justice, sort of global justice, cannot simultaneously support this legislation. They can't do it in good faith, because these trade deals are really implicated in a lot of things, including the undocumented immigration that's become such a huge issue. There's no way to analyze the current flows of immigration globally outside of the general context in which trade agreements are victimizing people in the global south who end up having to leave and come to the global north for jobs and so forth. So it's really it's at the center of the public debate in this country about immigration. So we think that it's important for the senator to look at who's supporting what. I think representatives, as I said, just to reiterate, institutions and organizations that are representing working people have opposed these trade deals, starting from NAFTA all the way to FTAA to these bilateral trade agreements, because they lack the protections that Jerry just talked about: worker protections, environmental protections, and human rights protections.
We see the immigration issue as a global issue, and we know that the main reason why the families are leaving their countries is because of economic reasons. And free trade agreements, they're not balanced with all countries with developing countries. We need more programs that can, stabilize the programs and to put in a balance to competition with one country to the another. And it's not happening. And on top of that, the environmental issues, how NAFTA affected so much Mexico. At this point, the farmers are totally in danger in Mexico.
A friend of mine who's Mexican told me recently that Mexico is now importing jalapeno peppers from China, and this is one of the effects of NAFTA. But I also want to say something about Colombia, because the Colombia FTA is being pushed really, really hard now by the Bush administration and by the administration of Colombia. President Uribe, who is in all sorts of trouble in his own country because of his connections with drug lords and the mafia. I would like to see Senator Obama take a really firm stand on that, and I'm going to be watching to see how he votes on it when it comes up.
There's a lot of Colombians involved, Danielle, in this organization, and because they're very concerned about this upcoming trade agreement. But in some ways, we see Peru as kind of a test case of, so where do people stand on Peru? And when people don't show up to vote, or they make public statements saying, we support it, that doesn't give us a lot of confidence about what's going to happen when the Colombia vote comes up, when the South Korea vote comes up, which is another very concerning one, when the vote on Chile comes up. All these are coming down the pike, and so we're really concerned about this. So we hope that you'll communicate this with the senator. We hope there's contact information on the letter. I'll give you an extra copy. So
we just paid a visit to the offices of Senator Barack Obama here in Chicago at 300 West Adams to voice our concerns about his conduct recently during the debate on the Peru Free Trade Agreement. When he campaigned both for the Senate here in Illinois and for the U.S. Senate and even for the president, he has expressed questions about the trade agreements, the NAFTA trade agreement, CAFTA, FTAA. He's generally been skeptical about the trade agreements, the degree to which they're really in the interest of working people. We're kind of amazed that just this past week, instead of going to Washington to vote against the Peru Free Trade Agreement, he chose to stay away instead, and in the last few days has actually expressed support for it. So it appears that the Senate, much like the rest of the candidates right now, Hillary Clinton, have chosen the strategy of not showing up for these quote-unquote controversial votes as a way to essentially escape scrutiny, because they promised labor, they promised working people that they will oppose. Hillary Clinton is talking about revisiting NAFTA and remaking NAFTA. The senator has expressed strong skepticism about NAFTA, so it doesn't make any sense that a crucial vote such as one on Peru was not taken by either one of them. So this is a real concern for us advocates of working people. They can't have it both ways. They need to say to labor unions, to working people, that they are opposed to this trade agreement and actually show up when there's a vote to demonstrate that. Unfortunately, that has not happened in this particular instance. And so we're going to continue to put the pressure on the senator. It's important that the rhetoric of opposition to these trade agreements be matched by real action, a real willingness to vote when it really matters.